you are an artist, producer or songwriter and you want to supercharge your ability to write, then this video is for you. Have you ever felt like your lyrics felt dull compared to what your favorite artists create? Have you ever tried to write a love song for the love of your life and you wanted to be perfect, but you just weren't sure on how to make it perfect? Have you ever found yourself stuck staring at a half-written page with inspiration run out? Then keep watching to find out how a simple story about an old poet in the desert can skyrocket your writing skills. Roll the intro. Before I tell you the story, let's take a quick dive into why so many amazingly talented artists and musicians often find writing songs and lyrics to be such a big challenge. Well, it could be perfectionism, having a lack of ideas, or maybe you're overthinking it. Maybe you feel you can't write under pressure. You're too easily distracted. Could it be that you feel limited in your knowledge? Or your desire to be unique makes it hard to write naturally? What if I tell you that there is a natural superpower on this earth that shows us exactly how to overcome your struggle to write? I've been writing stuff for as long as I can remember, but I always wrote something every now and then, never very consistently. I was super afraid that wasn't good enough. At times, I had songs buried so deep underneath it all that it took me months and months to even start. And when the song was finished, I was absolutely terrified to perform it for people. When I wrote the first song for my girlfriend, in an odd turn of events, I had to perform it for a group of people instead of just for her. I was so terrified that it wouldn't be good enough. I was so freaked out that my hands kept slipping off the strings and I had to start over twice. Well, guess what? She loved it. And years later, I turned this song into a video for Valentine. It's not the best song in the world, maybe, but for me, it's super special because of the story behind it. And that's lovely to me. When I started creating content and producing music full-time, however, I couldn't do just every now and then. I had to come up with a way of writing a steady flow of content and music. And I want it all to be great, but we need to realize that it's a journey. You create, you learn, and you evolve. The goal should be that you are thrilled about what you create. You know, like a kid. I actually saw a research the other day, conducted in the 80s on a group of 2,000 subjects, that suggested that the creative level of more than 80% of kids between 3 and 6 were marked as creative genius. 6 to 10, the percentage was 60%, and at the age of 35, only 10% were seen as creative geniuses. This tells us, sadly, that life and society unlearn us how to be creative. But it also tells us that we should take note on how kids create. Watching my own kids create, I discovered a rather genius way that supercharged my ability to write. I boiled down the patterns of what they do into 3 tools that can supercharge your process and enable you to create things that you will be thrilled about. I'll show you how to weaponize inspiration, create a powerful creative grind, and crystallize your efforts, adding detail and structure. And as a bonus, I'll tell you my secret on how to create catchy and original melodies. So make sure you keep watching until the end. Let's find out how the first tool works with a story about an old poet in the desert. There once lived an old lady, a poet, in a tiny cabin in the desert. One night she awoke from a rumbling in the distance. She got up, put a blanket around her shoulders, and went out to see what was happening. Outside, in the pale moonlight, she saw this gigantic, monstrous sandstorm coming right at her, raging, violent, shaking the house so that the books fell from the shelves and the pots and pans rattled in their drawers. She turned around, got into her house, and picked up a pencil and her notebook, and in its passing, grabbed that storm by its tail and wrote the whole thing down. And then she went back to bed and slept till late in the morning. The next day, while sipping a nice cup of coffee, she opened the notebook to see what she had written down. But at first glance, she couldn't figure out what exactly she had written at night. But on closer inspection, she found that she had written the poem down, but completely backwards. I love this story because it's often how inspiration works. I'll explain in a second, but first hit the like if you like my drawing skills. Meet Billy the Kid. Inspiration just struck in the most inconvenient of time. See, it's the middle of the night and Billy woke up to find an idea in the middle of the room. If he uses a chair, he's just big enough to catch it. The problem is, he knows he's not allowed to make a ruckus when it's still dark as hell outside. Like the sandstorm, inspiration usually hits him at the most inconvenient of moments. And this is usually not very practical, because if you wait for inspiration to write a song, it can sometimes be a long wait, and some people even just sleep right through it. So what I want you to learn from this is to be alert, and when the inspiration hits, write it down or record it as it is, even if it's just a sentence. Just don't be tempted to figure out the whole thing at that moment. Like the old lady and like Billy, just catch the core. The idea is to build a library of inspirations, personal inspirations. Number 2, the creative grind. Billy is a fortunate boy. He successfully decoupled inspiration from the writing process. And now he has a bag full of chunks of good inspiration. Billy doesn't have a good excuse anymore to not start writing. Better yet, he can't wait to start working on the big nugget he found the other night. But let me demystify something first. Everyone can write a song. My toddler daughter this morning, when she woke up, made 2 songs in the first 10 minutes she was awake. And my 6-year-old son sometimes is a constant machine of nonsensical melodies and lyrics and creativity stuff, right? They don't care if it's good or not. And that is exactly the point. As with inspiration, don't overthink it. Just do it. Back to Billy. He has his little library of inspired tidbits. Some are good, some are even excellent, and some stink like the tater he put in his drawer last week, which he was oddly pleased to find again, despite the stink and the white fluffy spots. What Billy does is this. He ruffles through his little inspiration library, selects something that resonates, and then he puts it into focus and expands on it by freely associating around the theme. Don't overthink it, just barf anything on the paper you like. Do it however suits you best. If you want to rhyme, rhyme. If that is not your strong suit, do it without. Great and terrible songs have been written that rhyme, and also great and terrible songs have been written that don't. For example, in Good Times, the song I talked about earlier, the central theme is the good times that we had. And the song idea started by counting up from the beginning. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? The first line I had was, once I knew you, you knew me. 2, 3, made place, 4, fire in our hearts. Using the phonetic pronunciation in a creative way. Later in the song, I use this trick again in I see the sea that you're in, I feel the emotion you have been. That's it. Just write and expand. And the more you do it, the more it will come naturally. Like the song I wrote for my girlfriend, it might not have been good at that time. It might have been a little better when I turned it into a video. And I'm pretty sure I can do a much better job today, but I always love the first 2 versions of that song, despite their flaws. You should go and find it and give it some love too. Leave a comment or something. It should be somewhere on the channel. Alright, back to Billy. Look at the mess he made. That's not good. This is not good, Billy. It's a mess.
I'm not gonna clean up, Dad. It's important to me that it stays messy.
It's easy to make songs. Everyone can do it. but it's hard to create good lyrics. Let's take a look at the third tool. The problem is that we maybe assume that good songs just magically roll out one's sleeves, but they don't. Bits of inspiration can come rolling out of sleeves, and they're absolutely necessary in a good song. But to make something amazing, you'll have to refine it, and you'll also have to refine yourself. So Billy now has this big pile of ideas and rough drafts. It's fun, but it's still a bit of a mess, right? This is where the final tool comes in: crystallization. Crystallization is all about taking that raw material and refining it. Think of it as polishing a diamond. You already mined it from the earth and cut a rough form, so now it's time to polish it until it shines. Here's how Billy does it. First, he picks out the pieces that resonate the most. Not everything he has written is gold, but that's okay. Don't be afraid to throw out the lines that don't work. Focus on building a clear structure. This could mean finding the right sequence for the verses, a catchy chorus, or a strong bridge. Think about the composition in terms of contrast, tension, and energy in their most basic form. You can do this, for example, by setting out the parts of the song on a timeline from 0 to 100%, and then draw an intensity curve to guide the arrangement later on in the process. Now comes the polishing. This is where Billy adds the details that makes his lyrics pop. Tweak the wording, play with metaphors, but above all, ensure that the emotions that you want to convey come through clearly. This is also where you fine-tune the rhythm scheme, the rhythm, and even the melody if it's part of the songwriting process. The key here is patience. It's all about taking those raw ideas and craft it into something that not only sounds right, but also feels right. Remember, the best songs are often the result of meticulous refinement. You got the inspiration, you've done the grinding, and now it's time to crystallize the work into something that you're proud of. And there you go. Billy now has a song that's not just a jumbled collection of ideas, but a polished, cohesive piece of art that has come to life. Now, before I share my secret tip about creating catching melodies, I want to give you a challenge. Take an inspiration nugget that you want to use in a song or maybe a poem that you will write, say, next week, in the coming week, and share it in the comments below. To summarize, be ready to catch inspiration when it strikes. Embrace the grind to generate content and crystallize your work into something brilliant. With these tools, you'll find that writing lyrics not only becomes easier, but probably also a lot more rewarding. This video is the first part of a series on how I approach music production. Next video is all about melodies and chord progressions. So please don't forget to subscribe for more awesome insights and stories that will supercharge your creativity. Now for the ones that are still watching, the brilliant hack on how to create perfect, catchy, original melodies every time. It's pretty easy. If you want to do this, ditch the tools. Just use your mind and your voice to create a melody. So no computers, no instruments, no anything, no chord pads, just your voice. And if you do this, you'll see that your mind gets a chance to put its unique fingerprint on your melody. Relvoet out.